Right now, in South Dakota, there were 12 actual standing houses listed for under $70,000. That should not be possible. This is a state with zero income tax, where people earn good money and the median home value is pushing $260,000. By every metric, real estate here should be expensive. But when you look at these 12 properties, you realize the price tag is a warning. One of them is a 124-year-old gamble on a Great Plains foundation. One has a floor plan that makes no sense, 2,300 square feet, listed as one bedroom. And the last property on this list pulled in $30,000 in rental income last year, but there is a catch the listing hopes you overlook entirely. That is what this video is. 12 properties. Every price has a reason. The strangest one is last. Delment. Delment, South Dakota. $60,000, 3 bedrooms, 0 baths listed, 1,680 square feet, built in 1901, 1 acre. Start here because this property tells you immediately what kind of list you are on. 3 bedrooms, no baths listed, that is the first signal, 1,680 square feet on a full acre, $60,000, built in 1901. Delment is in Douglas County in southeastern South Dakota, population under 200 people. When you are buying in a town this size, you are not buying into an economy, you are buying into solitude, cheap land, and a project. The envelope has been addressed. New shingles and vinyl siding installed in 2016, so the roof clock is not at 0. What the listing does not say is the entire concern. No baths documented on a property this old means the interior situation is incomplete, non-standard, or something an inspector will need to describe for you. A 124-year-old structure on the Great Plains has been through freeze-thaw cycles that would have destroyed lesser construction. The foundation and mechanicals are the entire conversation, not the price. At South Dakota's average effective property tax rate of around 1%, $60,000 produces roughly $600 a year in taxes. That resets upward once the county records your purchase price. Factor it in. The acre of land is the only thing here that does not require debate. Winner, 25 grand and a shop. Winner, South Dakota. $25,000 for a house with a detached shop in a town called Winner. The irony earns itself until you read what the listing actually says. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,344 square feet on a 6,969 square foot lot. The original structure dates to 1925. In addition came in 1998. The shop was built in 1990. 3 separate construction eras, 1 price tag. Winner is the county seat of Tripp County in south-central South Dakota. Population around 2,800. Agricultural economy, stable enough that it is not a ghost town, small enough that your resale buyer pool is specific. The listing frames this plainly as an investor or flipper play. Translation, do not move in without a crew ready. At $25 per square foot with a shop on a county seat lot, the raw math is worth a contractor conversation before you dismiss it. The South Dakota 3. Stop here before going further. 3 risks specific to South Dakota real estate at this price point. None of them appear in any listing. Miss one of them, and the deal math collapses. First, the freeze-thaw cycle. A vacant South Dakota house with no heat running through a winter is not just cold, it is actively deteriorating. Pipes burst, foundations stress, moisture infiltrates in ways that dry climate properties simply do not experience. Vacancy here is not neutral, it is destructive. Second, septic systems. Most rural properties at this price point are not on municipal sewer. A failing septic system is a $5,000 to $15,000 problem that no listing will disclose and no price will reflect. Septic inspection happens before any offer, not after. Third, insurance. South Dakota sits in a hail corridor. Insurance carriers know it. Roofs older than 15 years are not just difficult to insure in this state. Some carriers will not write a policy at all. No insurance means no conventional loan. If the roof looks tired, call an insurance broker before you call a real estate agent. Every property from here is measured against those three. Lecher, the one that raises more questions than answers. Lecher, South Dakota, $31,000, 1 bedroom, 0 baths, 207 square feet, built in 2014, lot size disputed. 207 square feet, no utilities connected, unfinished interior, $31,000. This is a cabin, not a house, and the listing knows it. Rough sawn lumber, a loft, off-grid framing, built in 2014 out in Sanborn County in central South Dakota. The build date makes it the newest structure on this list, which is almost the most confusing thing about it. Almost, because the listing claims 1 acre of land. Zillow's structured property data shows the lot at 3,484 square feet. 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. That is not a rounding error. That is a discrepancy large enough to send you directly to the county assessor's office before any other conversation happens. At 207 square feet, with no utilities and a disputed lot size, the use cases are specific: hunting camp, remote retreat, or a personal finish-it-yourself project. Primary residence and investment rental are not on that list without substantial additional infrastructure spend. Verify the land description with county records first. Everything else is secondary. Mobridge, the one that already did the work. Mobridge, South Dakota. If Lecher was a question mark, Mobridge is the exact opposite. $49,000, and someone already paid for the expensive part. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 2,104 square feet, built in 1942 on a 6,969 square foot lot. Mobridge is in Walworth County on the Missouri River, roughly an hour north of Pierre. In 2024, the seller updated the shingles, furnace, air conditioning, water heater, and did interior work. Those are the 5 capital expenditure categories that every buyer of a cheap old house is forced to budget for on day one. On this property, they are already handled. That buys you time, and time is the thing renovation projects consume fastest. The attic and basement both carry expansion potential. The large backyard has room for a garage that is not currently there. For a 1942 build on the Missouri River with a fresh mechanical package, $49,000 is a number that earns genuine attention. Hosmer, the one that actually feels normal. Hosmer, South Dakota, $49,900, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,406 square feet, built in 1920, 7,100 square foot corner lot. After a cabin with no utilities and a 2-bedroom project on the river, the market in Hosmer feels almost relaxingly normal. $49,900 for a 1920 build, sitting on a 7,100 square foot corner lot. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,406 square feet in Edmonds County, north-central South Dakota. The listing frames this as well cared for, language you rarely see at this price, and it actually means something when it is in the description rather than baked into a higher number. That corner lot gives you genuine street presence and yard access, useful for parking, outbuildings, or just breathing room. The 1920 build date means the South Dakota 3 still apply. Foundation movement, original plumbing, knob and tube electrical. The questions do not disappear because the listing sounds tidy. The difference here is that well cared for suggests an owner who paid attention rather than one who let it drift. Whether that translates to a real reduction in deferred maintenance is exactly what an inspector is there to confirm. Of everything on this list so far, this is the property a first-time rural buyer could most plausibly walk into without a full renovation crew standing by. Winner, again, the square footage mystery. Winner, South Dakota, $55,000, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, listed at 2,296 square feet, built in 1925, 6,520 square foot lot. Winner shows up twice on this list. The first property was $25,000 and a raw renovation project. This one is $55,000, and it comes with a data problem worth flagging before anything else. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, built in 1925 with front and back enclosed porches. The headline lists 2,296 square feet. The written listing description mentions 1,664 square feet of primary living space plus a 216 square foot addition, which adds to 1,880 square feet, not 2,296. The header and the description do not agree, and that 416 square foot gap matters when you are building a renovation budget or setting an appraisal expectation. Pull county records before you assign any per square foot value to this property. What is not in dispute, 4 bedrooms and 2 baths in a county seat for $55,000 is a meaningful amount of house, regardless of which number is accurate. Enclosed porches in a South Dakota winter are not a luxury. They're a thermal buffer between your heated interior and the outside air, and they matter. The 1920 build carries the standard questions, and this county sees winters that are not abstract. Verify the square footage with county records, then talk to a contractor.
Tindall. 4 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 1 problem. Tindall, South Dakota. $68,500. 4 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,656 square feet. Built in 1900. 0.26 acres. Up to $68,500, and you land in Tindall, the county seat of Bonham County. Population around 1,100, about 45 minutes from Yankton. 4 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,656 square feet on 0.26 acres, built in 1900. The Tindall location matters because the proximity to Yankton means you are not completely isolated from a regional economy, which makes rental math at least theoretically interesting. But the constraint is the layout. 1 bathroom for 4 bedrooms is a bottleneck for daily living and for rental appeal. Adding a second bath is a capital expenditure you need to price before you commit to any strategy here. At $68,500, this earns its position on the list by being a large footprint in a county seat. Whether it justifies the price depends entirely on what an inspector finds in a structure that has been standing since the previous century began. Menow, the one where someone actually cared. Menow, South Dakota. $69,900. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,664 square feet. Built in 1908. 6,372 square foot lot. If Tindall was about footprint, Menow is about preservation. Original wood banister, wood floors, original trim, original doors, a covered porch, main floor laundry, and a covered patio out back. All of it for $69,900 in Hutchinson County. Original woodwork in a 1908 house is not a given. It gets ripped out, painted over, or destroyed. The fact that this listing leads with what survived, combined with 2 full baths and main floor laundry, makes this the most genuinely livable property on the list. The honest tension is Menow has a population of 650 people. This is not a rental market, it is a community. If you are buying this to live in or hold long-term, the preserved character is a real asset. If you try to underwrite it as a rental investment, your tenant pool is dangerously thin, and your exit strategy requires finding a very specific kind of buyer. Know exactly who you are before you make an offer. Britain, the one that just makes sense. Britain, South Dakota, $70,000. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,876 square feet. Built in 1948. 6,969 square foot lot. This is where the practical, utility-driven buyer stops scrolling. $70,000 flat in Britain, the county seat of Marshall County. Population around 1,200. 1,876 square feet. Built in 1948. Hardwood floors, original woodwork, spacious kitchen, large fenced yard. Across the street from the school, next door to the grocery store. In a town of 1,200 people, location relative to daily infrastructure is not a throwaway detail. It is a material quality of life factor. Being walking distance from the two anchor institutions of rural life matters for a family and matters just as much for a tenant. The two-bedroom, two-bath layout is an unusual configuration that suggests a modification at some point, worth understanding before purchase. But as a post-war build, it is more modern than the century-old properties earlier on the list, and the inspection conversation will be different. At $68,000 in a county seat with genuine livability, this is the most straightforward, honest value on the board, which makes it the perfect palate cleanser for the final three properties, because none of them are straightforward.
Bowel, the one you will remember. Bowel, South Dakota, $64,950. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,090 square feet. Built in 1900. 0.33 acres plus additional attached lot. Stained glass windows, original woodwork, hardwood floors throughout. Walk-in closets, a 2-stall garage, a shed, a privacy fence, and an extra attached lot. All of it for $64,950 in Bowel, Edmonds County, 2.5 hours from Sioux Falls. These are not features that get retrofitted into a 1900 build. They were built in when building well meant building to last. At roughly $31 per square foot, the bones of this house are extraordinary for the price. But this is exactly where the South Dakota 3 comes back into the picture. A structure built in 1900 has been on its foundation for 125 South Dakota winters. You are not buying the stained glass, you are buying whatever is underneath it. If those floors are level and the foundation has stabilized, this is the most visually compelling property on the list. If they are not, the inspection report will tell you a very different story, and the renovation budget will reflect it. This is the one you need a structural engineer at, not just a general inspector. Hovind, the one that makes no sense. Hovind, South Dakota, $65,000, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2,332 square feet, built in 1973, 0.35 acres. 1 bedroom, 2,300 square feet. That makes 0 sense. So what is this thing? The listing acknowledges the obvious. 2 additional rooms could be converted to bedrooms with work. That framing tells you this was likely a commercial or special use structure at some point, or a residential build that was never finished the way it was intended. The attached garage is wired for a heater, which in this climate is not a feature, it is infrastructure. The large concrete pad out front suggests a working use: shop, equipment storage, a trade operation. If you can properly convert those rooms and get a legitimate 3-bedroom appraisal, the math changes. If you cannot, you are paying $65,000 for a large 1-bedroom in rural Potter County with no clear comparable properties to anchor your valuation. The pitch, home, hunting retreat, or investment, is accurate in the sense that all 3 are theoretically possible. Which one actually pencils depends entirely on what a contractor tells you about those 2 rooms. Get the floor plan, get the contractor call. Do both before you get attached to the square footage. Keystone, the closer. Keystone, South Dakota, $39,900, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 358 square feet, built in 2020, fully furnished, currently operating as a vacation rental near Mount Rushmore in Keystone, South Dakota. The sale does not come with a single inch of land. That is not a Zillow error. The listing is explicit. This is a movable cabin currently operating as a vacation rental near Mount Rushmore in Keystone, South Dakota. The sale does not include the real estate beneath it. You are buying a structure. Where it goes is your problem.
Patio furniture, gas fire pit, wall air conditioning, cove heat, loft bedroom. A complete short-term rental unit in one of South Dakota's top tourism markets. That $30,000 income figure is the only reason this property exists as a serious conversation. Here is what that number does not include: the cost to relocate the structure, the cost to acquire or lease land in a location with comparable tourist access, permits, utility hookups. The gap between where this cabin sits now and where it would need to sit to reproduce the conditions that generated that income. None of that is in the $39,000 ask, and none of it is cheap. The people who do well with this are the ones who have already solved the land problem before they close. The people who get hurt are the ones who buy the income history and assume the geography transfers with it. A $30,000 annual return on a $39,000 asset is a return profile that sounds like an obvious decision. The work required to recreate it from scratch is why it is not. No other property on this list requires you to decide where it will exist before you own it. That is why it is last. South Dakota has no state income tax. It has a property tax rate that actually runs above the national average at around 1%. It has a climate that treats vacant houses as a demolition project in slow motion. And it has a rural real estate market where the difference between a deal and a disaster is almost always buried inside the listing description, not in the price. Freeze-thaw cycles, failing septics, and uninsurable roofs in a hail corridor are the three things that separate a buyer who knows what they are doing from one who learned the hard way. The price is always the last thing to look at. The first thing to look at is always why. Which property on this list was the one you would actually buy, and which catch killed the one you almost wanted? Drop both in the comments. And if you want the full math on what relocating the Keystone cabin actually costs and whether the income model holds in a new location, that video is on your screen right now.